Morocco is a rising star in football, co-hosting the World Cup in 2030 and building the world's largest football stadium. In business, but also on the global stage.
Morocco figured out how to actually play out its cards.
Because Morocco claims this territory, Western Sahara, the source of one of Africa's longest-running territorial disputes.
Pretty much everything Morocco does is to build up global support of Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara.
Morocco's king has one big goal: to get the world to accept that. And he's almost there. Let's start our story on the beaches of Dakhla, with Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner. Morocco is advertising Dakhla as the perfect holiday destination in Morocco. But depending on who you ask, it isn't even in Morocco, but in Western Sahara. Most of which is illegally occupied by Morocco. We are showing the map like that to reflect that it's a disputed territory. The conflict about who owns the land has been going on for 50 years. And there are a lot of different maps. Let's start with this one. Western Sahara used to be a Spanish colony. The region has long been home to the Sahrawi, the inhabitants of the desert. In 1973, they founded a movement to fight for their independence, the Polisario Front. But Morocco claimed historic ties gave it the right to control the region. It sent hundreds of thousands of civilians to cross the border. The message of the so-called Green March: this is ours. In a controversial move, Spain withdrew and handed over control to Morocco and Mauritania. Mauritania later pulled out. But there's another player too, Morocco's regional rival Algeria. Algeria started supporting the Sahrawi and the liberation movement, the Polisario Front, especially with weapons. Morocco fought the Polisario in a war that lasted for 16 years. Many Sahrawis fled to Tindouf in Algeria. Around 170,000 refugees still live in camps around the city.
Algeria is very much involved in the conflict. I mean, the Polisario sits in Algeria's territory. The headquarters of the Polisario is in this refugee camp in Tindouf.
That was Sarah Yerkes, an expert in US foreign policy towards the Middle East and North Africa. Look at what Morocco has done to keep Western Sahara. It built a 2,700-kilometer-long sand wall known as the berm. It's heavily mined, and more than 100,000 Moroccan soldiers are guarding it. The berm divides the territory of Western Sahara. The bigger part is occupied by Morocco, and the rest is controlled by the Polisario Front. The United Nations has always supported a referendum to decide Western Sahara's future, but it hasn't taken place. Most countries never recognized Morocco's claims over Western Sahara. And even worse in Morocco's eyes, some started recognizing the state proclaimed by the Polisario Front, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, or SADR.
Morocco actually quit the African Union for quite a long time because of the fact that they allowed the Sadr to come in as a state.
So basically, the SADR was welcomed to the African family, while Morocco had isolated itself. But then came a new king, Mohammed VI.
الصحراء لم تكن يوما ولن تكون أبدا مطروحة فوق طاولة المفاوضات.
Western Sahara is the most important issue, full stop. This is something that drives all of his economic interactions globally. It drives certainly his diplomatic and political interactions.
Mohammed first focused on winning over other African countries. Imru Al-Kais Talha Jebril is a researcher and policy advisor focusing on Morocco.
We don't have oil, we don't have gas, or at least not in the quantities you need, but we do have phosphate.
Phosphate is a key ingredient for fertilizers and is essential in today's agriculture. So, to have enough to eat, we basically depend on these rocks. Morocco possesses most of the world's phosphate reserves. This phosphate is being transported on the world's longest conveyor belt. You can even see it from space. The white line is phosphate dust, showing the path to the Atlantic from Bukra, one of the world's largest phosphate mines. And you guessed it, it's in Western Sahara. Look how Morocco has developed this mine in recent years. OCP, Morocco's state-owned phosphate company, operates it.
Morocco was definitely aware of the importance of phosphate fertilizer for African agricultural growth.
The king started a charm offensive with African leaders.
Yeah, you could talk about a phosphate diplomacy.
Morocco's offer not just phosphate, but long-term cooperation, such as training farmers and investments in local fertilizer production.
If you have a willing customer who's willing to take your product at the same time, willing to build deeper political and diplomatic relationships, it's a win-win.
And it started working. The king got more and more African countries on his side. Then came this special moment. After 33 years, Morocco returned to the African Union.
L'Afrique est mon continent et ma maison. Je rentre enfin chez moi et vous retrouve avec bonheur. Vous m'avez tous manqué.
They only rejoined recently because they realized they needed to be a part of the body in order to help sway the body towards their position. And that worked. They now have a lot of countries in the African Union that support them.
And Morocco didn't stop there. In 2020, for the US, the map of Morocco went from this to this.
This map will be presented to His Majesty King Mohammed VI.
It shows all of Western Sahara as part of Morocco.
This is what Morocco has been wanting for years and years and years.
Under President Donald Trump, the US recognized Morocco's claim over Western Sahara. That map sealed a major shift for Morocco.
And they were well aware that if the United States made this recognition, other countries would follow suit.
But how did Morocco manage to convince the US? Trump really wanted Arab nations to move closer to longtime US ally Israel. And Morocco saw an opportunity.
I mean, Trump is the deal maker, right? So Morocco thought, okay, maybe we can have this kind of quid pro quo. We recognize, Israel, and then as a back offer or deal, the US would recognize our country.
And Trump went for it. He sent his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to claim their part of the deal.
To open the door wide to a new era of cooperation.
Morocco and Israel established diplomatic ties.
What we've seen since day one of Morocco's normalization with Israel was that the Moroccan public was not happy with that.
That anger increased with Israel's war in Gaza. But the thousands of protesters didn't have an impact on the kingdom's ties with Israel.
I think the fact that it has survived the past 2 years just shows how strong that desire is for the Moroccan government to continue.
Because Morocco's deal with the US and Israel was about a lot more. This show of force in the Moroccan desert is called African Lion. The joint military exercise is co-led by Morocco along with the US, a sign of their close partnership. And that comes with privileged access to advanced US weapons.
Morocco just wants to be the leader of the African continent, trying to compete with Algeria, who has a way larger military.
Remember Morocco's big rival, Algeria? Morocco is trying to catch up to it militarily, with Israel's support. Morocco is getting Israeli kamikaze drones and even planning to produce them.
But it is important for Morocco to maintain the best equipment, the best security access. And so that comes in part from its partnership with Israel. And so it's been incredibly controversial in Morocco, but also beneficial to Morocco at sort of protecting its own territory.
Or rather, what Morocco considers its own territory. So let's go back there, to disputed Western Sahara. It's difficult to get hard numbers about the population living in the Moroccan occupied part. But around 190,000 of the 600,000 inhabitants are believed to be Sahrawi. Human rights groups say those who question Moroccan sovereignty face repression.
You've had crackdowns against journalists, crackdowns against civil society activists, human rights activists.
It's estimated that the overwhelming majority of the population is already Moroccan. Also because Morocco has been encouraging its citizens to move here, with state subsidies for food and energy and investments. Like in Dakhla, the oceanfront town. Morocco is building a new port here, and it's part of something bigger, the so-called Atlantic Initiative. The idea? To give these landlocked countries access to the Atlantic Ocean.
This Atlantic Port Initiative is in part to showcase Dakhla in Western Sahara as the sort of capital of this initiative in a way, and that, to make it clear that this is part of Morocco.
The countries that would benefit from a trade corridor to the Atlantic recently experienced coups d'etats, so basically illegal takeovers of power, and that left them isolated.
Morocco, using its very much slow politics type of, let's say, strategic patience type of politics and geopolitics, it waited until these couple countries had coups d'etats, and it found an opportunity to say, let's do the Atlantic Initiative and come use our ports.
The Atlantic Port Initiative is another example of sort of Morocco extending itself as a leader.
In the wake of the coups, France, the former colonial power, was driven out of the region. It lost the influence it held for decades. France needed Morocco to try and maintain some relevance in the region. So the king saw an opportunity to get France to accept Morocco's claim on Western Sahara and went all in.
Morocco was exerting pressure actually on France by many different ways, by either blocking trade talks or investments.
France has been one of Morocco's biggest foreign investors.
French interests are really, really deep entrenched in Morocco.
So maybe you can already guess what happened next. This new French map also shows all of Western Sahara as part of Morocco. And that's all it took for them to be friends. The two countries signed agreements, among them investments reportedly worth 10 billion euros. And in the parliament in Rabat, the French president said these magic words.
La souveraineté marocaine.
Moroccan sovereignty.
Having French recognition over Western Sahara was very important because of the deep ties that France was the colonial power over Morocco.
Every time a country recognized Morocco's sort of sovereignty over Western Sahara, all the other countries found it actually quite easier to do so.
In Europe, also the UK and Spain had backed Morocco's position.
He has done a very good job, I would say diplomatically, kind of making it really challenging for the Polisario to see a path forward where it maintains sovereignty over Western Sahara.
Now, even the UN Security Council supports a path towards Moroccan sovereignty over all of Western Sahara, with a certain amount of autonomy for the Sahrawis. So a Sahrawi state seems off the table for now. Morocco's strategy of creating facts on the ground and making deals has paid off.